Hi, I'm Mike Coons. I'm the Extension Forestry Specialist at Utah State University. And I teach pruning quite a bit, and pruning, like so many other aspects of life, the tools are very important. And in pruning tools, we tend to think of pruning off small and medium and large branches and using appropriate tools for each one. We won't talk about chainsaws here today, but that would obviously be something used for very large branches and for tree removal. And there's specialized training needed for that. But for small branches, the smallest, twigs up to maybe 3/4 of an inch or so in diameter, you can use hand pruners like this. I prefer pruners that are a shear type, that have a blade that passes by a fixed blade, a very sharp blade. And I prefer these to the kind that have a blade that just pushes into a kind of an anvil and squeezes the twig, because you can cause a little bit of dieback. Always keep them sharp. Loppers are just, these are a large version of that same shear type action. These have a compound action, so you get a small amount of movement for a large amount of handle movement, but it gives you leverage for cutting off a slightly bigger branch. You'd especially use these for shrub renovation. And then there's saws, hand saws. This is a folding hand saw. The blade is replaceable. And for any saw I like, they have a cutting action where the teeth are very sharply filed and they're angled somewhat backwards towards the handle. What that means is, as you pull, you're doing most of the cutting on the pull stroke, and the blade is under tension when you're doing that. So unlike all of us have tried to cut through a board with a crosscut saw and had the saw wobble, especially cheap saws, that can happen with pruning as well. But if you're pulling, the blade's under tension and you don't get that wobbling. The blade is also hollow ground. You can't really tell, but it's thicker at the tooth side than at the back, so it tends not to bind in cuts. And this branch, this saw, believe it or not, would be for sawing off a branch up to maybe 4 or 5 inches in diameter. I use it for almost everything. It's very sharp and really cuts very quickly. And then this is a large saw that's almost overkill. I've cut branches probably up to an 8 inch in diameter with this. It's also got the teeth that angle mostly backwards. Both of these saws cut on both strokes, the push and the pull, but more on the pull. And again, the blade stays under tension when you're doing most of the cutting. This with the curve can really be useful too, because it tends to bite in as you get near the end of the stroke, pulling back, and really gives you a lot of good cutting action. Make sure all your saws are kept clean and sharp, and don't use any saw where you have dirt on the material, because dirt will quickly dull the blade. If you have to cut dirty material, have an old saw, an old blade that you use for nothing but that. And I don't use bow saws, just because bow saws often are hard to get in and make the accurate cut I want to make.